Do you have a system, you're operational at the functional enterprise, however, you want to be able to survive something big like either maybe a data center failure where you have a backup data center. Maybe you want to have two data centers, one in one region, one in another region, and you want to be able to fail over from one to the other if something goes wrong. I mean, these are things we all clearly are looking for when we need a functional system that stays up all the time. Well, that's what we're going to dive into today to show you some more tools that come out of the box with CockroachDB. But before we do that, let's bring in my good buddy here, Felipe. How's it going, man?
Hey Greg, how you doing? How you doing, guys? Interesting topic. I'm
Yeah,
glad I make it today.
we've talked in the past about we did a whole episode and it was on surviving a regional failure, and that goes into a specific topology, a specific configuration on particular vendors, but maybe it doesn't fit your paradigm. It could be, you're running a different configuration, you already have an existing situation. Maybe you're running on-prem, you're not even in the cloud. You happen to have provisioned a couple data centers and you need a version of failure that doesn't quite fit that paradigm we talked about before. Well, we've got something really cool here. Oh, I hit the wrong button. I want to hit this one. We've actually got a hands-on exercise we're going to dig into. This is actually lifted out of one of our modules that's in production right now. This module hasn't been released yet, so you're getting a sneak peek at CockroachDB's first-class citizen logical data replication. Um, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click the start button, and we're going to start doing this exercise. So what we have the ability to do is something Felipe probably knows better than I do is CockroachDB has changed data capture, or CDC, and you're able to basically pipe out a series of updates as they're happening, inserts, updates, deletes, what have you, and you can pipe those as messages to downstream services that need to digest that and respond to that without having to buy a third-party product and bolt it onto your database. And that's what the CDC feature is. Well, at the heart of that is the feeds, these range feeds that are coming off the database. Well, there's another feature that we're using here that is built on the same core nugget, those feeds, and it's this replication feature, the ability to replicate content from one cluster to another. So what I'm going to do is go in here and let me talk about the topology that we have. So I didn't want to use something in this exercise that looked like East or West, US East, US West. That sounds a little too much like a particular cloud vendor. And so I wanted to say this is really anything that you want it to be. So in this case, I went and came up with, like, let's imagine you're running one cluster in one location, geographic location, let's call it Austria. And you're running another cluster, sort of a backup cluster, secondary cluster in Brazil. Now, these countries nicely start with the letters A and B, and they kind of nicely have just one word. And I may or may not have gone to Chat GPT and said, give me a list of single word country names that start with the letter A and the letter B. Or I may absolutely have done that. But we're going to go in here and figure out how to set this up. So I've got a cluster running in each of them, a CockroachDB cluster. The cluster can be any number of replicas you want. You can be running a 3-node cluster, a 5-node cluster, a 15-node cluster on each of these. But you want to replicate the content from one cluster to the other. So what we're going to do here is let's go into the in the Austria cluster's cockroach shell here. Okay. And let's just take a peek at what is inside here. Now we have there's some default tables that come with every CockroachDB cluster, and this is for system maintenance and all. But we have this one particular provision database. It's called Bookly. It's a cool online bookstore database. I mean, who wants to host a bookstore? And this one, it's not the biggest database. It has about 100,000 rows in it. Okay. So it's just a small database, little sample exercise, but I'm sure you can extrapolate what we're going to go through here to your own system, to your own enterprise. And in this one, we've got a basic database here. In fact, I can even, check it out. Select star from bookly.book. Let's limit 100, and just look at some of these, absolutely fantastic books for sale. Whose Problem Knit? I mean, that's a best-selling title from Mr. Mr. and Mrs. Noel Kemmer for just $73.27 in audio format. I mean, go write that down. We have Light Week Stack. I mean, there you go, by Muriel Shields on an ebook version, and it's only $94. Yes, this is conjured up data. We have a cool script that we ran to generate a CSV file and had it generate all these cute little book titles to have some test data. So anyway, we have this content, and if I go over to the Brazil database and go into the same thing and run that same interrogation script, there is no Bookly database. We have our system tables here, and there's no book table here. There's no Bookly database. There's no bookly.book table here. So there's nothing over here in Brazil, at least not yet. So let me go back to the Austria one. Okay. So, and that's what the thing had me do here. The next step was to go over to Brazil and let's check it out and verify there is no Bookly database. So the first step on the source cluster we're going to do here is we're going to switch on the availability, the ability to do these feeds that I just talked about. Okay. And so we're going to flip this parameter on. It says start enable feeds. Okay. And then I'm going to go over to the destination and I'm going to do the same thing. Because what we're going to do here is one of the things we have an option here with logical data replication is I can replicate the Austria data going to Brazil, and that's in a unidirectional, but I have the opportunity, if I want to have Brazil replicate in the other direction. And that opens the door to other potential architectures we can cover in future episodes of Select Star. So I can pick either unidirectional or bidirectional. So let's keep at it here. All right, so on the Brazil cluster, we've enabled this range feed setting. And then the one additional step that I need to do here is I actually need to create the database in the Brazil. So what I did is I just did that. And if I run this command again, now we can see that the Bookly database has been added to the Brazil cluster. That is something that won't be created automatically. We need a place to go put the content once it gets replicated, okay? Now the next step in configuring this logical data replica configuration is I need to go back to the source cluster and I need to create an external connection. Wait, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this command here. So here, I'm going to highlight it here maybe to make it easier to see. Well, how about I change the view here because now it's getting squished. So down here, we can see that there's basically a URL pointing to the destination cluster. It has the protocol, PostgreSQL, the destination host name, Brazil, and the port that Brazil is listening on. And it's got the database. And in this case, I'm running this with no security because it's a demo. Okay. In production, do not do this. Run it with full security in place. But I'm going to create this basically a logical reference to the destination as a link. And then I need to go over to the other one and point this one back to the source. So now I've created connections. So this sets me up to be able to run this command here. Now let's look at this command here before we run it. It's not too hard to read. SQL is not rocket science, people. Create logically replicated table bookly.book. From table, and here the second part is from where. It's going to be based from bookly.book on the external source. This tells us where it's going to get the source of the content from. The Brazil database is going to look back at Austria to get its basis. And then it's going to say what kind of, is it unidirectional or bidirectional? In this case, we want a bidirectional link, and we want it to come from the source and go to the destination. That's the direction, the primary direction. And when it does bidirectional, it's going to create a job that goes the other way. So let's run that. Okay, what it's done here, it's just spit out a job ID. So it's actually launched a job that's starting up. And I'm going to go run this thing to go interrogate the system and say, show me all the jobs. I'm going to select from that and filter down to look for any jobs based on the book table. Okay. So I can see some of this stuff here. Here's a piece of that statement that I just ran is buried in here in one of the columns in the description field. We can see the timestamp for when it started. Now it's still operational, so we don't, the finished column is null, meaning it ain't finished. All right, so now I ran it again, and now we can see that okay, so now there's another job running. So it's going ahead and it's chewing through it. It may need a few minutes to actually sync up. Let's go check. Let's go do a little digging and see what we got so far. So we did a show tables command. And then here we got show columns from bookly.book. So we can see this table definition now has been created for us. Okay, that table didn't exist. We had just done a create database command, but no create table command. And here, if you do a select count star, you can now see that Brazil has 100,000 rows of data in it. So it's basically caught up and it's synchronized. Now let's go back here and go back to the Austria, the source database, and let's see if we can go make stuff wiggle a little bit, okay? First of all, let's check it out. Here we go. We're going to go to Austria and look over there. Are there any jobs running in the Austria cluster? You notice we didn't run any job creation stuff over here. It was all done on the Brazil cluster. Well, right here, I can see in the output 2 jobs have been created to help manage this. So there's two jobs that are continuously running in both clusters now to manage this sync up here for us. So now what we're going to do is let's see what happens if we insert something on the Austria side and see, does it show up in the Brazil side? Now let's imagine we always wanted to publish a book on learning CockroachDB here. So is there any books already with that title name? Well, if I query for it, no, this came out with 0 rows. There's no books there. So I'm just verifying there's no prefab data with this title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually insert a row of data into the table here. I'm going to call it Learning Cockroach DB, written by Mr. J. Doe himself, or herself. It could be Jane Doe. And it's all yours for $39.99. And if I now run that query again, I can see it listed. Okay. So I can see that one row of data is now published right here. So I inserted a new row of data in Austria. What happens if I go over to the Brazil? What happens if I jump over here? Now you notice I clicked the button here, and so the thing toggled me over to now we're in Brazil, okay? Okay, well, let me highlight that. And let's see if it came over here. I'm going to go run this command again. And now I can see this entry has made it over here. And notice here, we got the price is $39.99. So we created it in Austria, and it auto-magically replicated itself over to Brazil. Now, I said bidirectional. We set it up as bidirectional earlier in this exercise. So I should be able to make changes to this row on the Brazil side and see it percolate back to Austria. So let's put the book on sale. Let's say instead of it being $39.99, let's mark it down to $19.99. Call now. Okay, update bookly.book, set price equal to $19.99, where title equals Learning CockroachDB. If I run that query again right here, you can see it immediately applied this change. It was $39.99 up here. Now it's marked down to $19.99. So I should be able to go back to Austria and let's just do a select command and look for that same book. This time I'm just going to select title and price. And notice how it's now updated to $19.99 over in Austria. So now I actually have a system where I have 2 independent clusters, Austria and Brazil. They're each able to make alterations to the data. The changes are able to replicate to the other cluster and update, and they're able to keep up with each other. And so now if something happens, if I have a circumstance where perhaps the Austria cluster goes down for whatever reason, theoretically, I should have a load balancer somewhere where my clients are connecting with this cluster. The clients, I could have clients in Austria and clients in Brazil. The Austria clients talk to the Austria cluster. The Brazil clients talk to the Brazil cluster. But I could put a load balancer in front of each of them. I'm going to change the angle here, but I could put a load balancer in front of each of them that basically, if I have calamity happen where suddenly Austria goes down, all the Austria clients I could point them to Brazil and they could keep on running. And so they could stay operational. They can make updates to the database. And whenever we get the Austria cluster back up and running, it should be able to sync back up with all the changes based on the tables that I've applied to. So right there, I've just coded a solution in being able to replicate data back and forth between two independent clusters, if you will. So, which makes them not perfectly independent, but they're both running on different infrastructure. And that's kind of the crash course in logical data replication.
These are these are scenarios like if you want to have like an active um, kind of a solution or active passive at some point, right? Like if they trying to migrate maybe some of the data or new functionality. I'm seeing this um, special way to say, yeah, we're gonna start working on this. Well, maybe on the Brazil one, we don't only have Bookly, but we have already maybe another system that we are, you know, kind of working right now. But we need that data from Austria, and while that is happening, you have probably yes active, but probably with different business logic. But at some point, you want to maybe terminate that, and this will be a very useful tool to say, "Hey, we're
Mm-hmm.
going to do some migration." And even if there are some users using that cluster, now we can have migrated and because the mutual kind of or dual going back and forth, uh, you have that particular feature, right? I think it's very
Yeah,
cool.
that's actually a great idea. I had not thought of that. That's another good paradigm because you could run that where the two clusters, you could call it this is cluster A, B. You could just say those are basically versions, like major versions of your database are running in separate clusters. And you can make it where the next version is C and the next version after that's D, and you can be migrating. That's a tactic to, and as you phase out the apps, you can then finally drop the old ones, but that way you can keep the versions synced up in a sense. So,
Now,
start thinking of other paradigms where where does replication serve you best?
do we know if or maybe probably we need to ask engineering here, but do we know if, for example, doing an upgrade, imagine that we have a version 23. I don't know if we have version maybe 24, and then you have a new cluster that you want to migrate, and maybe there is the upgrade, right? There is the way that we can do upgrade. Normally, we drain some of the nodes, and we can do like step by step draining to upgrade to the new version of the cluster. But what about if we use this replication where we have the version 24? Now we have the latest version 20. I think it's 25.3.1, and now we do this replication without even interrupting the service, right? So we can have that
Yeah.
particular use case without going into a let's we have a window on Friday 11 p.m. to shut down everything. So we need to let the customers know that we're gonna do some migrations, or we're gonna move into a different cluster, maybe because of cost. And now what we want is to do this upgrade. So instead of doing step by step, draining every single node that we have, for example, in one of the cluster, 5 nodes, and we need to do the upgrade step by step for each single node. Now we can have this particular feature that allows to actually do replication with zero downtime. That will be kind of the cool thing, right?
Yeah, I do know this much I learned from Rob Reed, our wonderful technical evangelist. There is a lot of backwards compatibility baked into CockroachDB. So if we're talking about purely upgrading, like from CockroachDB version 24 to version 25, uh, since they've added the data replication core feature, those multiple versions of CockroachDB are not breaking in and of themselves. So you're able to go do the migration within the cluster, um, but you run into circumstances of, well, there's other places where you could do that. So there's a lot of options available here. For example, we talked about what about versions of the database or versions of the data content itself. And this is where I saw somebody who had to manage a database schema for 10 years, and I saw the tactics that he deployed. One of these is never delete a column, for example.
Hmm.
So he would add new columns, and you got to handle it so maybe the old data can feed what the new column is. They would create like triggers and stuff like that. Or he would move the data to a new column, but he would leave copies of the old stuff behind to support those clients. Once those clients moved off of that, basically you had columns that were no longer referenced by anybody. You could get rid of them, but you didn't have to. So there's existing tactics known in the SQL community about how to properly evolve your schema. We got tools like Liquibase and other ORMs or something that are really good at handling these kind of change data sets. So you have one level there. You then have as your database engine support backwards compatibility and stuff like that, and that's something that I think that CockroachDB is very good at. But then you run into well, I've got this other extenuating circumstance where maybe this ability to replicate the data would be beneficial to upgrade to, or um, another avenue, and we're not going to go in and demonstrate it today. I'm actually shooting to save this for a future episode of Select Star. Is um, maybe I need the replication not because I'm trying to institute a survivability. I'm not trying to have two data centers where one can survive an outage of the other data center, but instead, what if I have my operational cluster that's spread across the country? Maybe I'm running 15 nodes in all time zones, and I have a very complex topology. And in that situation, if you're trying to do analytical queries, it's not going to work very well, because if you tend to have to run into full table scans to do group bys. You have to do sums and averages and other statistical functions. And on a distributed cluster spread across the country, that's not very efficient. But what if I could replicate the key tables I need for that analytical query and replicate that to a cluster that's sitting in a single data center? And so it doesn't need the same availability, but then I could go run my analytical queries over there. And we call that workload
Oh
isolation.
yes,
And so start thinking of what's some other scenarios. If you can think of a scenario where you could use a replica of a table or a 50 tables of a collection of tables, what's a scenario you can think of where if you had a replica copy of the data, what's something you could do with that? How would that
yes.
benefit you?
Yeah, like for example, yeah, we have a lot of customers that they have like different environments, right? Like a dev, staging, production, and probably
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I need a copy of production, or maybe staging that is very near to production, because I want to run with that particular load, they explain analyze, right? So with
Yep.
explain analyze, we're running, and imagine we have like a million of rows. Obviously, we're not going to run explain analyze over production because it could take a long time, right? And it could affect the other customers. So what about if we use this feature of replication, we have our own data without any traffic. We just dedicated just to see how we can optimize queries, with all the data that we already have in production. So yeah, that's very cool. This is so cool.
Yeah, and we ran into scenarios when I worked on a previous contract where there was a test bed that was right next to the production system. The only difference between them, there was a wall with the door, and it was on a totally different network. But they had gone to the network engineering people and said, "Could we get a one directional link that we can open and close as needed so we can route live traffic into the test bed?" And it's like, well, would you like your test bed to have a replica copy of that kind of traffic flowing into your database?
Yeah.
It's like all this stuff is like, man, I could have used this 20 years ago.
Oh
So
yes.
start thinking of ideas. What's other places? So I first heard about logical data replication, or LDR. I think it was like, yeah, last September when I was at Roach Fest up in New York. And so I heard somebody say it. Immediately the gears started cranking in
Yes.
my head about, wait, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about that? And I was like,
Yeah.
nice. And
Yeah, and
the other
it's
nice subtle thing is you're not having to go grab some other product off the shelf and hook it up to your database. Like this is why I
yes,
like CDC so much. There's nothing wrong with Apache Kafka, but other systems, in order to get this feature, have to go pick up something like Kafka or Debezium or what have you, RabbitMQ. You know, there's different tools, and you're gluing it together and tying it up and trying to get all the parts to speak to each other. But I like a first class citizen like this that's able to do this for you.
yeah, this is very cool. Yeah, and part of the CDC, we need to kind of the first thing we need to do in order to do CDC is to start with the with that particular setting on the cluster, right? So we need to enable the change feed or the range feeds equals to true, right? To say, hey, we're ready to start doing something, right? So in
Yep.
this case, just to create the change feed, that will be a way to do it. And maybe that will be another topic that we can discuss here in this channel.
Yeah.
I can show the CDC how easy it is to do kind of do some integration with other systems using Kafka, using webhooks, S3, or whatever you have right now with your integration into different systems, right? Not all the time with maybe a database. Maybe you have a third party system. Maybe you have an external customer that requires some of your data. So that will be part of what we're
Well, you know
doing,
what I
right?
have to say to that idea?
What? Nice.
Okay. All
Very
right.
good.
All right. Now, if you want to get a crack at using some of these stuff on CockroachDB, I invite you to go to university.cockroachlabs.com. There's also a QR code if you're watching this on video. We have all kinds of content. This is our new landing page. You can see the courses we have. That if you're already signed up for your subscription account, you can get the next opportunity. Some of these, there's some self-paced courses you can get access to, but now we are um, uh, piling up with a chance to sign up for a seat to tune into one of our modules. We have a schedule where we're going to run each of the various classes, and you can sign up to catch the next showing of a particular module. So we definitely have content on CDC. We're trying to roll out this LDR one to get that done for data replication. So I invite you to go check out university.cockroachlabs.com. I want you to be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. That way, this show comes out every other week, and don't want you to miss the next episode, because we may be doing that, or as Felipe has signaled, he'll be happy to do a CDC module in the future. And then finally, if you check the show notes down below, there's a link to where you can catch the podcast. We finish the show, we cut it, print it, download it, and then throw it out onto all the podcasting platforms. So whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, you can tune into it and have a nice, comforting, relaxing listen to the Cockroach DB show Select Star on your drive home from work.
Yeah.
So we will see you all next time.
All right.
This episode is over, but your learning has just begun. Visit CockroachLabs.com to find all kinds of content to expand your knowledge.